Hello everyone, this is week 10, lecture 1 of biology 10, and in this lecture we will be delving into the taxonomy. So in subsequent lectures we will be talking about how different living organisms are classified into different kingdoms and what are the characteristic features of those kingdoms. So the first kingdom that we are going to talk about is called the kingdom Monera, and this mainly constitutes the prokaryotic organisms. All the living organisms known to human beings have been classified mainly into 5 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Kingdom Monera includes prokaryotic organisms. What are the characteristic features of prokaryotes? They are unicellular organisms. They lack membrane-bound organelles and they do not have a well-defined nucleus. Prokaryotes have simpler cell structure with the cell wall made up of peptidoglycan, unless the cell wall of plants that is made up of cellulose. Prokaryotes can be autotrophic or heterotrophic, depending on whether they can produce their own food or depend on external sources for their food requirements. Kingdom Monera is further classified into 2 main groups: Archaebacteria and Eubacteria. Archaebacteria are ancient bacteria that can adapt to extreme environmental conditions. They lack peptidoglycan in their cell wall and they have unique lipids in their cell membrane. They have different ribosomal RNA sequence than the Eubacteria. The Archaebacteria can further be of 3 kinds: methanogens, halophiles, and thermophiles. Methanogens produce methane and they can survive conditions like where there is lack of oxygen. Halophiles thrive in high salt concentrations, and thermophile or the thermoacidophiles survive in conditions which are hot and very acidic. Eubacteria or true bacteria have cell wall made up of peptidoglycans. They are found almost everywhere on this planet and they include both autotrophs and heterotrophs. Eubacteria can further be of 3 kinds: the gram-positive bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, or cyanobacteria. We will talk about the characteristic features of these different groups in subsequent slides. Let's look at the cellular structure of monerans, that means the cellular structure of prokaryotic organisms. As we have studied before, prokaryotes do not have a well-defined nucleus. Their cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. Their ribosomes are 70S type. They have extra chromosomal DNA called plasmid, and they may also have a flagella which helps them to move. Based on the shape, prokaryotes or bacteria or monerans can be classified as coccus or cocci, bacillus or bacilli, vibrio, and spiral. So the cocci are spherical shaped or round shaped, and bacillus are bit elongated in a cylindrical shape, and vibrio looks like a comma, as you can see in these pictures, these round bacteria, and here you have some cylindrical or rod shaped bacteria. Now depending on how many of these bacteria or moneran come together to form this structure, they have further classification. For example, in Diplo, you would have 2 bacteria in a group. In Streptococci, you would have several bacteria that are forming a chain, and in Staphylococci, you would have many bacteria coming together to form the irregular cluster. Now, depending on whether these organisms can take up the gram stain or not, they are classified as gram-positive bacteria and gram-negative bacteria. Gram-positive bacteria have thicker peptidoglycan layer and they have no outer membrane. They retain the crystal violet dye, which is the gram dye, and they appear purple under the microscope. Some examples are Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus pneumoniae. Now, gram-negative bacteria have thin peptidoglycan layer, and they have an additional outer membrane which is made up of lipopolysaccharides. As the name suggests, they do not retain the gram stain and they appear pinkish under the microscope. The example of this kind of bacteria is E. coli and Salmonella typhi that causes typhus in human beings. Monerans have different modes of nutrition. They can be autotrophic, that means they can produce their own food. They can produce their own food from sunlight, that's why that would be called photosynthesis, or they can make their food from the chemicals around them, which is called chemosynthetic mechanism of making food. If these organisms are heterotrophic, that means they obtain their food from outside of their body, they can further be of three kinds. Saprophytes obtain nutrients by decomposing organic material around them. These organisms are therefore called decomposers. Parasites obtain their nutrients from their host. They live on other organisms as parasites and cause damage in them. That's why they are also called pathogens, or the organisms that cause certain pathology in human beings. Symbiotes are those organisms that obtain their nutrients from other living beings in an association that benefits both the partners. So it benefits the bacteria as well as the organism on which it is thriving. Monerans can reproduce through different mechanisms. They can reproduce sexually and asexually. Asexually, they reproduce by binary fission, and rarely they also perform budding. If it is a sexual reproduction, there will be exchange of genetic material. It is not a true sexual reproduction as we see in the higher organisms. So the genetic material can be exchanged through three different processes: conjugation, transformation, and transduction. Conjugation is the transfer of genetic material between the two bacterial cells through the direct contact between the two bacterial cells. In this process, there is a donor cell and a recipient cell. Between these two, there is the formation of a bridge from the pili, that is a tube-like projection from the donor cell. Through this process, one bacteria is able to transfer its plasmid into the other bacteria. This process increases the genetic diversity and often provides antibiotic resistance from one kind of bacteria to the other. Transformation is the process by which a bacteria is able to uptake a free DNA fragment from its environment. Now, some bacteria sends out free DNA fragments into their environment. Other kind of bacteria are able to take up this naked DNA fragment from their environment and then incorporate them into their own chromosomal DNA. Some bacteria have natural tendency of taking up DNA from their environment. Other kind of bacteria can be made competent artificially in the lab by giving them a slight heat shock. Transformation not only provides genetic variation to bacteria, but it's also a very important tool used in molecular biology. The third method is the transduction method. In transduction, the genetic material is transferred from one bacteria to another through viruses. The transduction can be of two types: specialized transduction and generalized transduction. In specialized transduction, the bacteriophage integrates into the genome of a bacteria and then picks out a small piece of the bacterial genome and leaves the bacterial cell. In the generalized transduction, This bacteria accidentally packages some of the bacterial DNA, and then when they sit on the next host, they drop that DNA into the new bacterial cell where it can be integrated into the genome of the new bacteria. What is the significance of this process? This process helps in gene transfer and bacteria evolution. It also helps in spreading the toxin genes from one bacteria to another. There are several important key roles that bacteria or the members of kingdom Monera play around us. For example, their ecological role. They are the natural decomposers. They break down organic material around us. They also help in fixing nitrogen, like the rhizobium in the plant roots. Bacteria can be engineered to produce different kinds of antibiotics and even hormones like insulin. They are also used in industry for the process of fermentation to make yogurt and cheese. Now we will study about some important bacterial diseases. Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's an airborne disease which is spread when an infected person coughs or sneezes. The symptoms associated are chronic cough with blood in sputum, fever, night sweats, and weight loss. The organ primarily affected by this disease is lungs, whereas it can also spread to other parts of the body. Recommended treatment is long-term use of antibiotics, and this disease can be prevented by vaccines such as BCG vaccines. Pneumonia. Pneumonia is caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae. It's an airborne disease. It can also spread by direct contact or through contaminated surfaces. The symptoms of this disease are pain in chest, difficulty in breathing, productive cough, fever, fatigue, and chills. The organ mainly affected are lungs, and in the alveoli of lungs you will see inflammation and filling of some fluids. Recommended treatment are antibiotics, and this disease can be prevented by pneumococcal vaccine and by maintaining good respiratory hygiene. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae. It is spread by contaminated water, food, especially in the areas of poor hygiene. The main symptoms related to this disease are severe diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration, rapid loss of body fluids that can lead to shock or even death. The organ mainly affected are the organs of digestive system. The recommended treatment is to keep the patient hydrated through oral rehydration solutions, and sometimes even antibiotics are used. It can be prevented by drinking clean and safe water and maintaining proper hygiene. Tetanus or lockjaw situation is caused by Clostridium tetani. The spores of this bacteria can enter the body through cuts and wounds in contaminated dirt, dust, or animal feces. The symptoms of this disease are muscle stiffness, painful spasm, especially in jaw and neck, and difficulty in swallowing or breathing. The organs mainly affected are the organs of central nervous system. The recommended treatment is antitoxin, which are tetanus immunoglobulins, and sometimes antibiotics. This disease can be prevented by tetanus vaccines, which are very commonly available. Lyme disease is caused by Borrelia burgdorferi. It is transferred by the bite of a tick from a deer. The common symptoms related to this disease are these bull's-eye shaped rashes, fever, headache, fatigue, and in later stages there can be joint pain, heart palpitation, and some neurological symptoms. The organs mainly affected are skin, joints, heart, and nervous system. Common treatment are antibiotics, And this disease can be prevented by just keeping yourself safe from the bite of ticks. Now, to summarize, we have seen that monerans are essential for Earth's ecosystem. Despite their simple structure, they are highly diverse and play many crucial roles in biological processes.